So I'm going to make a bag for my best friend because I made one for my girlfriend and showed my best friend the bag, and she was like, now I want one. She wanted it to be able to fit an A3 book in, as she does art using the A3 book, and she didn't want to carry it anymore, so she wanted a bag for that book. So I said to her, I'm going to make you a bag and I'm going to personalise it. My girlfriend likes musicals and two of her favourites are Six and Heathers, so that's what I decided to sew on her bag. Firstly, I made two different designs, but I decided this one was the better option of the two. As I wanted writing and pictures, I decided that I should make some little letters and make my onion an apple so that I can cut them out and cut them into the material. I then cut out my letters. I then took two old tops, cut the top bit off and used the grey bit as the lining layer. Then I cut out and sewed my onion. After that, I put down the letters to figure out where I wanted them to go. I then decided what fabric I wanted to use. I decided to use the fabric that I made the onion with. I then sewed my onion on. I then used the pieces of paper for the lettering and cut my lettering out of the material. I then pinned them in place and then sewed them. Once they were pinned in place, I sewed them on. I then cut out the car from paper and then made it out of material and sewed that on there, and then I made beep beep lettering. I then pinned beep beep into place. As I sew on the words beep beep, I'm going to explain the significance. In 2017-2018 time, I was a very sad little human, still kind of am, but I didn't exactly want to live anymore, and I was on FaceTime to Kira, aka the person I'm saying this for. I was talking about how I really felt about life and not wanting to exactly live. And as I was explaining this, tears rolling down my eyes, like really hot tears, you know the ones. I had my window open and a car went past, and the car decided to go beep beep right as it went past me as I was crying, and it was quite funny. I mean, to me at the time it wasn't funny because I was literally crying, but now I look back at it and I'm like, that is so funny. So now whenever I'm like sad, she just goes beep beep, just to kind of remind me that, you know, life is kind of worth living at some points and we've got to live for the moment and everything. So beep beep became this thing that we'd say it even if we weren't sad or anything. It was just a thing that we said, but it definitely came, like, anytime I cried, I was crying, it was just either send a text of beep beep or say it. So beep beep became this huge thing for, you know, to make me happy when I am sad, which is great because I get sad quite a bit. Now let me explain I give you an onion. So I give you an onion is a phrase in the poem Valentine by Carol Ann Duffy. This poem we had to do for GCSEs and we had to try and memorise basically the poem and what it meant so we can analyse it in an exam. We didn't actually really have to do it because the big old COVID happened, but we still had to like learn about it. So once we analysed this poem in English, we did it mainly at home. We did it for a bit in class, but then the big old COVID struck and we were doing at home learning, and one of the things we had to cover was Valentine over again, and we did that, and I was on FaceTime to Kira and I was just trying to get her to memorise it because I have quite good memory but she lacks in that area. So I was trying to help her and everything, and I just went, I give you an onion, and then it just started from that. But years beforehand, onions had already kind of been synonymous with us anyway. We had food tech before we had English. She wasn't in my food tech class. One time we were making something and it had onions in it, and some of my friends brought their onions back that they didn't use, and she loves eating raw onion, so she was just like snacking on onion in English. And we had a cover, and this cover, who we now know as Miss Celery, her name's not Miss Celery, by the way, it was a name given to her for reasons. Miss Celery took away her onion and placed it on the radiator which is very dirty, so she couldn't eat it afterwards, which was very sad, and she felt very sad about it because she was like, my poor little onion. So no onions for her. Fight Me for an Apple came around because of Garrett Way and My Chemical Romance. One of his performances done live, he yells, "Fight me for an apple." And she showed me this clip, and it just became a running joke of us just fighting each other for an apple. So I give her an onion, and then we fight for an apple afterwards. And one birthday of hers, I gave her an onion. Like, I had bought her an onion, and I just gave it to her for her birthday. That's how far we took this joke of I give you an onion and fight me for an apple. I then finished sewing Beep Beep onto the bag. Now I'm sewing on the apple. I've used this material, which was a top worn by me 2 Halloweens ago for a Halloween costume idea we had, which was she was a goth and I was the murderer. And I bought something red because I thought, well, I'm going to use fake blood. It was in the charity shop for like £2 or something. But once the costume had finished, I had washed it, obviously, but none of the stains came out. So there was a bunch of white stains from the makeup and red stains. So I didn't ever wear it again, which I felt sad about
Beep
because
Beep was
I
nicely
hate
sewn
having
into
clothes
place.
that you wear once and that's it. So I kept it for an occasion like this where I'd be sewing and I can use the material again. So I feel like it's iconic that I make the apple out of this material. I'm also going to be using a green material for the leaf. It's the same one that I've made the car out of. This material, a few years ago, I hated the idea of paper wrapping. I still do. And now I don't really wrap presents. I just buy little bags or make little bags for them or something. But a bit ago, I used to sew. Instead of wrapping it up, I used to sew the little material around the present, which was a fun way of doing it. That material was used for that purpose for her 17th birthday. Then this year, for my 18th birthday, she wrapped up Onion Man. I'll show you a picture of Onion Man. Onion Man was something I gave her. I found it in a charity shop, and as I said, I give you an onion. So I gave her an onion. So I gave that to her about last year. This year, she found an Onion Man in a charity shop. So she bought Onion Man and gave me an Onion Man. So we both have Onion Men. She wrapped that present up in this green material. So I'm using that green material both for the car and leaf on the apple because we have both given each other presents with it. So it's very intertwined with our lives, just like this red fabric here. Once I'd finished sewing the apple onto the bag, I then started with the lettering, cutting it out of paper and then cutting it out of the material. I then pinned that in place and then sewed that in place as well. Once everything was done on that side, I then pinned both sides together so that I could sew it. I then sewed it and realised I didn't like the way it looked, / it wasn't big enough, so I unpicked that and then decided to add these trousers and the seam of these trousers to both the sides and the bottom so that the bag could be bigger. Once that was finished, all I had to do was make the straps and sew them on. To make the straps, I took a trouser leg and cut it in half. I then cut the ugly ends off of this so that it could look nice and neat. I then cut it in half. Then I figured out how exactly I wanted it to fold and how I wanted it to look. Once I had finished figuring out how I wanted it to look, I then pinned it in place. I then had to press my seams both before and after sewing. I then figured out how and where I wanted to sew it so that it would look nice. And then I sewed it. I then sewed my straps on and it was done. And here's the end product. Thank you for watching. This took me about 5 days as it was all hand sewn and very tiring and tedious. Some days I did less as I had to go to college, and other days I did more. 3 of the days I spent the whole day doing sewing, nothing else. All in all, it took me about 40 hours to complete. Probably a bit more than 40 hours, honestly. And I'll see you when I make something else or I have something to film. Not exactly sure what I should film. If you've got any suggestions of what you would like to see in my life or just see me do, then please leave them in the comments. You don't have to, but please do if you want to. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.